This 6-year-old beggar girl feeds a wheelchair-bound elderly woman, unaware that her son is a millionaire. You won't believe what he did 24 minutes later. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The cold wind whipped through the brick streets of Charleston, while Lily, just 6 years old, clutched a stale piece of bread to her chest. Her large, expressive eyes attentively watched the elderly woman sitting alone in Marion Square, shivering in her wheelchair. The overcast autumn sky made that afternoon even more melancholic, but not even the intense cold could extinguish the sparkle in the girl's eyes. Lily adjusted her worn dress, a gift from her Grandma June, and walked decisively toward the woman. Her feet, protected only by worn-out flip-flops, made noise against the ancient cobblestones. A few yards away, inside a luxurious parked car, Evan Miller, 45, observed the scene with growing interest. "Are you hungry, Mom?" Lily asked, her sweet voice echoing in the nearly empty square. The elderly woman, Yolanda Miller, 78, raised her confused eyes toward the girl. Her lost gaze wandered between the present and distant memories, a consequence of the Alzheimer's slowly consuming her mind. "George, is that you, George?" Yolanda murmured, mistaking the girl for a memory of her deceased husband. Her wrinkled hands trembled slightly as she tried to focus her gaze. Without hesitating, Lily broke her only bread of the day in half and extended the larger portion to the woman. "I'm not George, ma'am, but you look hungry, and my Grandma June always says we need to help those who need it." Inside the car, Evan felt his heart clench. This girl, with worn clothes and torn flip-flops, was sharing her meager food with a complete stranger. And not just any stranger, his own mother, who had disappeared from the luxury nursing home where she was interned a few hours earlier. Lily sat on the park bench next to the wheelchair, watching with satisfaction as Yolanda slowly ate the piece of bread. "Do you live around here?" "I live with my grandma near the old docks. It's not a fancy house like these downtown, but we keep it real clean." Yolanda stopped eating for a moment, her eyes gaining a momentary glimmer of lucidity. "You remind me of someone special," she murmured, her voice choked with an emotion she didn't fully understand herself. Evan continued watching, torn between the urgency of rescuing his mother and the fascination with the scene unfolding. Before him, as the owner of the largest mining company in the region, he was used to dealing with numbers, contracts, and negotiations. But this simple act of kindness touched him in a way that no business success ever had. "Theo, I need you to track the nursing home's location immediately," he whispered on the phone, never taking his eyes off the scene. His son, Theo Miller, 25, responded with irritation on the other end of the line. "Dad, I'm in the middle of an important meeting with investors. I can't just—" "Your grandmother is sitting in a square, alone," Evan interrupted, his voice firm, "and she's being fed by a girl who clearly barely has enough to eat herself." The silence on the other end of the line was broken only by the sound of papers being shuffled hastily. "I'm on my way," Theo replied curtly, hanging up immediately. Lily continued her one-sided conversation with Yolanda, telling her about her day collecting cans with her grandmother, about the owner of the convenience store, Mr. Jenkins, who sometimes gave her day-old bread, and about her dreams of one day being able to study in a real school. "You know, ma'am, my Grandma June says she used to work in a big house, one of those really pretty ones. She says it was all so clean and shiny." The girl sighed, looking at the old mansions surrounding the square. "But then something sad happened. She never tells me exactly what it was. I just know that after that, we never managed to have a good life again." Yolanda, in another moment of clarity, gently squeezed the girl's hand. "Sometimes, little one, things that seem right can hurt a lot of people," she murmured before her eyes wandered lost around the square again. Evan felt A chill ran down his spine. Those words from his mother, even amid the confusion of Alzheimer's, carried a weight he couldn't fully comprehend. Decided, he got out of the car and walked toward the two. Lily, seeing the elegant man approaching, instinctively recoiled. Her grandmother always warned her about strangers, especially those wearing expensive suits. "Hello," Evan said softly, trying not to scare the girl. "I see you've made friends with my mother." The girl widened her eyes, looking from Yolanda to Evan. "Your mother? But she was here all alone, cold." "Yes, she left without telling anyone," Evan replied, feeling the weight of guilt in every word. "You were very kind to take care of her." At that moment, a black sports car braked sharply near the square, and Theo got out quickly, his expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "Dad, I've already called the nursing home staff. They're on their way." Lily, startled by the sudden movement, got up to leave, but Evan gently held her shoulder. "Wait, please. What's your name?" "Lily," she replied timidly, her eyes alternating between Evan and Theo. "Lily, could you tell me where you live? I'd like to thank you properly for taking care of my mother." The girl hesitated, her grandmother's words about not trusting strangers echoing in her mind. But there was something in Evan's eyes that made her feel safe. "I live with my grandma June near the old docks, on the last street before the hill." The name hit Evan like a punch to the stomach. June. It couldn't be a coincidence. That name was buried somewhere in his childhood memories, associated with a story his father never wanted to tell completely. Theo, impatient, interrupted the moment. "Dad, the nursing home staff is here. We need to take Grandma back." As the nurses approached to care for Yolanda, Evan noticed that Lily had disappeared silently, leaving only her small footprints on the cobblestones of the square. But something inside him knew that this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The wooden and tarp shack trembled with the strong wind blowing that night. June, 65, rummaged through an old shoebox hidden under her thin mattress, her wrinkled hands trembling not only from the cold. The yellowed photograph she held showed a younger version of her, wearing a maid's uniform, next to a man in a suit who smiled arrogantly at the camera. August Miller, Evan's deceased father, the man who had destroyed her life 30 years ago. "Grandma, are you crying?" Lily asked, entering the small room that served as their bedroom. June quickly hid the photo, forcing a smile. "No, my little angel, just this dust that keeps making me sneeze." She pulled her granddaughter close, hugging her tightly. "Tell me again what happened today in the square." Before Lily could answer, loud knocks on the makeshift door interrupted the conversation. June felt her heart race. No one usually visited them at this hour. "Stay here," she whispered to her granddaughter, getting up with difficulty. Upon opening the door, June felt her legs weaken. There, illuminated by the faint light of the distant street lamp, was Evan Miller. Even though she had never met him personally, she would recognize him anywhere. He was the living image of his father. "Miss June?" Evan's voice was surprisingly gentle. "Forgive me for the hour, but I needed to speak with you urgently." June remained silent, her whole body as tense as a string about to snap. Behind her, Lily peered curiously through the crack in the curtain that divided the rooms. "My mother, Yolanda, your granddaughter, helped her today, and when I heard your name, something—" Evan hesitated, choosing his words. "Something sparked in my memories. You worked in our house, didn't you?" The wind howled between the cracks. In the shack, carrying with it the smell of wet earth from the abandoned docks, June finally found her voice. "I worked there, yes, for 15 years, until your father kicked me out without rights, destroyed my reputation, and made sure I never got a decent job in the city again." Evan felt the weight of those words like a physical blow. "Please, let me in. I need to understand what happened." At that moment, powerful headlights illuminated the dirt street, and a black BMW parked abruptly. Theo jumped out of the car, his furious expression visible even in the dim light. "Dad, have you gone crazy? Do you know the risk you're taking coming alone to a place like this?" He stopped when he saw June at the door. "And all because of this, Theo?" Evan's voice cut through the air like a whip. "You have no right. I have no right. I just found out that my father, the CEO of one of the largest companies in the country, is visiting a slum in the middle of the night because of a beggar who—" "You better leave," June interrupted, her voice filled with a dignity that decades of poverty hadn't managed to strip away. "We don't need charity from the Millers. We've had enough of your family." Lily, who had been watching everything in silence, ran outside and placed herself between the adults. "Please don't argue with my grandma. She's good. She always teaches me to be good to everyone, even when we don't have anything to eat." The silence that followed was deafening. Evan looked at the little girl who, hours earlier, had divided her only bread with a stranger, and he felt a deep shame for the empire his family had built. "Miss June," he said finally, "I didn't come to offer charity. I came to offer justice. Please, let me try to understand what my father did." Before June could answer, thunder rumbled in the sky, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The sound of the water on the tin roof was deafening. "Grandma, water's coming in again!" Lily shouted, running inside to try to save the mattress where they slept. Evan looked horrified at the conditions of the shack. Water was already forming small streams on the dirt floor, and the roof threatened to collapse in several places. "Miss June, I can't leave you here. Please come with me, just until the rain passes." "Dad, you can't be serious," Theo protested. "The board is already questioning your decisions, and now you want to bring these people to our house?" June was about to refuse when a loud noise of wood cracking made her freeze. A part of the roof collapsed, letting in a cascade of water. "Grandma!" Lily shouted, scared, running into her grandmother's arms. Evan didn't wait for more discussion. "Please, Miss June, not for me, not for my conscience, but for Lily." At that moment, another thunderclap illuminated the sky, revealing June's face bathed in tears that mingled with the rain. She looked at her granddaughter, trembling with cold and fear, and at the shack that threatened to collapse on them. "All right," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible under the storm, "but only until the rain passes." While Theo watched in disbelief, Evan helped June gather a few essential belongings, including the mysterious shoebox that she insisted on taking. Lily, excited despite the fear, grabbed her only toy, a rag doll made by her grandmother with scraps of fabric. On the way to the Miller mansion, the silence in the car was heavy. Theo drove, his knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel so tightly. Through the rearview mirror, Evan watched Lily dozing off in her grandmother's lap, and he couldn't help but notice how June occasionally touched the pocket of her old coat, where she had kept the shoebox. What no one knew was that this stormy night would mark only the beginning of a series of revelations that would shake the foundations not only of the Miller family, but of all of Charleston. At the mansion, Yolanda, who had been brought back to the nursing home earlier, was now resting in her room after a busy day. In her moments of lucidity, she repeatedly murmured a name she hadn't spoken in decades. "June, June, she needs to know the truth." And as the storm continued to lash the city, inside the shoebox that June protected so carefully, besides the photograph, there was a yellowed envelope addressed to Evan, written in the elegant handwriting of his late mother, Regina Miller. An envelope she never had the chance to deliver, dated on the exact day of her mysterious accident. The Miller mansion stood imposingly against the stormy Charleston sky. Lily, still sleepy, widened her eyes upon seeing the entrance hall with its marble floor and crystal chandeliers. For the girl accustomed to the dirt floor, every step on that shiny floor felt like an adventure in a fairy tale world. "Grandma, look how it shines," she whispered in amazement, her voice echoing through the sumptuous setting. June, however, could barely breathe. Every detail of that house brought back memories she had struggled to bury for 3 decades. There, in that same hall, she had organized countless receptions. On the mahogany staircase to the right, she had taught a young Evan how to tie his first tie. And in that room, "Miss June," the voice of Mary Doris, 72, the current housekeeper, broke. Her thoughts. "Let me show you where you can settle in for tonight." June recognized her former co-worker, although time had painted white the hair that was once as black as coal. The two women exchanged a look laden with untold stories. "Doris," June murmured, her voice trembling, "you're still here." "And you've returned," the housekeeper replied, her words carrying a weight that only June fully understood. Theo, who watched the scene suspiciously, interrupted abruptly, "Dad, we need to talk in private." Evan nodded, but before he turned to Mary Doris, "Please provide dry clothes and a hot dinner for our guests, and prepare the blue room." "The blue room?" Theo protested. "That was Mom's room." A heavy silence fell over the hall. June instinctively clutched the shoebox to her chest, feeling the weight of the envelope hidden inside it. "Precisely," Evan replied, with a firmness that admitted no contest. "Miss June knew your mother better than any of us." In the library, while Lily and June were being led upstairs, father and son confronted each other. "What are you doing, Dad?" Theo snapped, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "First, you bring these people into our house, and now you put them in Mom's room? There's something you're not telling me?" Evan poured himself a drink, his hands slightly trembling. "Son, there's a lot I don't know about our own family. But tonight, when I heard June's name, when I saw that girl sharing her only piece of bread with her grandmother—" "Don't give me any sentimental crap!" Theo slammed his fist on the mahogany table. "The company is about to go public. The investors are nervous about your latest social projects, and now you bring 2 homeless people into our house." "Homeless? People who ended up in this situation because of our family," Evan retorted, his voice laden with an old guilt. Upstairs, Lily explored the blue room with fascination, her small fingers sliding across the soft fabrics of the curtains. June remained standing in the doorway, paralyzed by the sight of the room that remained exactly as Regina had left it. "Ma'am?" Mary Doris offered a change of dry clothes. "You remember where the suite bathroom is?" "How could I forget, Doris?" June replied, a sad smile on her lips. "I chose every detail of this room myself when Regina married Evan Sr. In the hallway, unnoticed, Yolanda had once again escaped from her room. The elderly woman wandered silently, her fingers touching the walls, as if searching for something familiar amid the confusion of her mind. "George," she called softly, entering the blue room. Her cloudy eyes focused on June, and for a moment a spark of recognition crossed her gaze. "June, you're back. You need to tell about that night." Lily, who was playing with her rag doll near the window, ran to Yolanda. "Mom, are you okay? Do you want a piece of my bread again?" The girl's innocent gesture triggered something in Yolanda. Tears began to run down her wrinkled face. "My light, just like my little one." Mary Doris moved quickly to help her employer, but June stopped her with a gesture. "Leave her, Doris. She needs to remember." "Remember?" Theo's voice sounded from the door, loaded with irony. "My grandmother barely remembers her own name. What could she tell that's relevant?" Evan appeared right behind his son, his expression serious as he observed the scene. His mother, who was usually confused and agitated, seemed strangely calm in the presence of June and Lily. "The file," Yolanda murmured, her eyes fixed on a distant point. "Regina found the file in August's office. She was going to... Miss Yolanda," June interrupted gently, aware of the danger of those words. "Let's help. You rest a little." But Yolanda grabbed June's arm with surprising strength. "You kept it, didn't you? Regina gave you something to keep." The envelope in the shoebox seemed to burn through the fabric of June's coat. She could feel Evan's piercing gaze, Theo's growing suspicions, Mary Doris's silent understanding. Lily, oblivious to the rising tension, held Yolanda's hand with affection. "Don't be sad, ma'am. When I'm sad, my grandma tells me stories. Do you want to hear a story?" The simplicity of the offer momentarily broke the tension. Yolanda smiled, a genuine smile that illuminated her time-worn face. "Stories. Regina loves stories too. Grandma," Theo intervened, his voice softer now, "you need to rest. It's been a very busy day." As Mary Doris gently led Yolanda back to her room, Evan remained, his eyes fixed on June. "Miss June, I think it's time we talked." June nodded, slowly. "Yes, it is. But not tonight." She looked significantly at Lily, who was beginning to yawn. "Some truths are too heavy to be revealed in front of innocent eyes." That night, as the storm continued to lash Charleston, each occupant of the Miller mansion faced their own inner storms. In the blue room, Lily slept peacefully, dreaming of shiny floors and sparkling chandeliers, while June watched over her sleep, the shoebox firmly guarded under her pillow. In the study, Evan rummaged through old photographs, searching for clues. In the frozen smiles of his mother, Regina. In his room, Theo frantically searched on his notebook, determined to find out what those two women could mean to his family. And in Yolanda's room, the elderly woman murmured in her sleep, reliving in fragments the night her daughter-in-law, Regina, had entered her room 30 years ago with an envelope in her hands and tears in her eyes. "I need you to keep this. Yolanda, if anything happens to me," the mansion guarded its secrets like a fortress. But as June well knew, even the most powerful fortresses can fall when the truth begins to come to light. Morning arrived in Charleston, bringing with it a timid sun that tried to break through the remaining clouds of the storm. In the blue room, Lily woke up surrounded by more comfort than she had ever experienced in her 6 years of life. Her grandmother, however, was nowhere to be found. In the mansion's kitchen, June had been up for hours. Her hands, calloused by decades of hard work, moved with familiarity between pots and ingredients, preparing an elaborate breakfast as she used to do 30 years ago. "You didn't need to do this," Mary Doris said softly, watching her former colleague work. "It's not your obligation anymore." June continued stirring the cake batter without looking up. "Old habits, Doris, and I need to keep my hands busy, or I'll go crazy thinking about what I need to do today." The aroma of fresh coffee and homemade cake was enough to attract Lily, who entered the kitchen still in her pajamas, borrowed clothes that belonged to Theo when he was a child. "Grandma, are you making cake?" the girl asked, her eyes sparkling with expectation. Cake was a rare luxury in their lives. "I am, my little angel. That special recipe that Mrs. Regina taught me." June paused, her hands trembling slightly. "You know, she loved it when I made this cake for Theo's breakfast." As if invoked by the mention of his name, Theo appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was disheveled and had dark circles under his eyes, indicating a sleepless night. "That smell," he murmured, an unexpected emotion in his voice. "I know that smell." "Cornmeal cake with guava paste," Mary Doris explained. "June's specialty. Your mother said it was the only cake that made you eat fruit when you were little." Theo stood frozen, long-buried memories resurfacing. He remembered distant mornings, sitting at the kitchen table while his mother smiled, watching him devour generous slices of that same cake. "How can you know so much about me?" he asked June, his usual hostility mixed with confusion. Before she could answer, Evan entered the kitchen, followed by a nurse pushing Yolanda's wheelchair. "Because June wasn't just our housekeeper, son," Evan said, his voice laden with recent understanding. "She practically helped raise you in your early years." Yolanda, who was usually distant in the mornings, seemed to awaken to the familiar aroma. "Regina," she called, looking around. "Regina, you promised to tell me—" "Ms. Yolanda," June approached carefully, placing a cup of tea in the elderly woman's trembling hands. "Regina isn't here, but I am, and it's time to fulfill the promise we made to her." Lily, feeling the rising tension, approached Theo and, to everyone's surprise, took his hand. "Do you want to share the cake with me? My grandma makes the most delicious things in the world, even when we only have old flour at home." The girl's innocent gesture hit Theo like a punch to the stomach. There he was, heir to one of the largest fortunes in the state, while this child considered a simple cake an extraordinary luxury. "Son," Evan intervened, "I think we need to have a family conversation. All of us." He looked meaningfully at June. "Did you bring the envelope?" June nodded slowly. "I brought everything. The letters, the photos, the documents, everything Regina entrusted to me the last time we saw each other." "What are you talking about?" Theo demanded, his voice rising. "What envelope? What documents?" At that moment, Mary Doris cleared her throat discreetly. "I'll take Lily to see the garden. There's an old swing there that she might like." "The swing is still there?" June asked, a shadow of a smile on her lips. "Your father installed it, Theo, on your 4th birthday." "How can you know that?" Theo asked, softer now. "Why do you know so many things about my childhood that I don't even remember?" "Because I was there," June replied simply. "I was there. When you took your first steps, when you said your first words, when you had your first high fever, and Regina stayed up all night by your side." While Mary Doris led a reluctant Lily to the garden, the others headed to the library. June carried the shoebox as if it were a sacred relic. The library maintained the same solemn air as 3 decades ago. Mahogany bookshelves from floor to ceiling, filled with books that August Miller had never read, serving only as decoration to impress visitors. "It was here," Yolanda murmured suddenly, her voice surprisingly clear. "It was here that Regina found the documents." Theo sat down heavily in a leather armchair. "What documents? What are you talking about, Grandma?" June opened the shoebox with reverent care. From inside, she first took out the photograph she had shown earlier. Her next, "To August Miller," then a yellowed envelope with Regina's elegant handwriting. "Your mother discovered something, Theo," June began, her voice trembling slightly. "Something about your grandfather's business, about how he built the mining empire. Something so terrible that she couldn't keep it a secret." "Regina was always very curious," Yolanda continued, her eyes focused on some distant point in the past. "Very different from the other wealthy daughters-in-law that August wanted for his son. She asked questions, lots of questions." Evan took the envelope with trembling hands. "This envelope, was it addressed to me?" "Yes," June confirmed. "Regina came to me that night after your father kicked her out of here. She was desperate, saying that she had discovered something terrible in the documents in August's office." But my mother had a car accident that same night," Theo protested, his voice failing. "Accident?" June let out a bitter laugh. "That's what August made everyone believe. But Regina knew she was in danger. That's why she came to me. That's why she gave me the evidence." "Evidence of what?" Evan asked, although his face suggested that he already suspected the answer. "Of how your father built this empire," June replied, taking more documents out of the box. "Of how many families he destroyed, how many lives he ruined, of how he illegally expropriated land, contaminated water, bribery." "Lies!" Theo stood up abruptly. "This is all lies. You're trying to destroy our family's legacy." "No, son," Evan interrupted, his voice filled with regret. "They're trying to show us the truth about our legacy." At that moment, a joyful scream coming from the garden cut through the heavy air of the library. Lily, in her innocence, had discovered the simple joy of a swing. "That swing," June said softly, "was installed on the same day that August fired me. Regina had just discovered the first documents, and your father feared that I knew too much. He didn't just fire me. He made sure I never got a job anywhere in the city again." "That's why you ended up living near the abandoned docks?" Theo asked, his voice now a whisper. "Those docks," June replied, "were part of my family's land. Land that your grandfather took through forged documents, claiming exploration rights that never existed." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, Lily continued laughing, oblivious to the weight of the revelations taking place inside the library. Her laughter, so pure and innocent, seemed like a silent accusation against all the injustices that had shaped her destiny even before her birth. Evan finally opened the envelope, his hands trembling so much that he could barely hold the paper. Regina's elegant handwriting, preserved for 3 decades, began with words that would forever change the course of that family. "My dear son, when you read this letter, I probably won't be here anymore. There's something you need to know about your father, about our family, about the true price of our fortune." Regina's words echoed through the library as Evan read the letter aloud, his voice trembling with each new revelation. The yellowed paper contained not only accusations, but a detailed map of the systematic cruelty that had built the Miller Empire. "The documents I found in your father's office reveal a pattern," the letter continued. "Entire families were destroyed. Evan, not just June's family, dozens of them. Your father falsified environmental reports, bribed inspectors, altered deeds. The docks weren't just a business, it was a machine for destroying lives." Theo, who had poured himself a generous shot of whiskey, dropped the glass upon hearing the name of his current family. "The Rodriguez family? Them too?" "Yes," June confirmed gently. "The Rodriguezes lost everything when August contaminated their land with mining waste. Then he bought the property for a fraction of the value." "My God," Theo whispered, staggering into an armchair. "Christina, my fiancée, she doesn't know." "She knows," June interrupted. "Everyone in Charleston knows. Only you, protected by the walls of this mansion, lived in ignorance of your own privileges." Outside, Lily's laughter could still be heard, an innocent melody that made the revelations even more painful. Mary Doris watched her play on the swing, momentarily shielding her from the heavy truths being revealed inside the house. Yolanda, who had remained silent, began to hum an old lullaby. "Regina used to sing that song to you, Theo," she said suddenly, her voice filled with surprising clarity. "The night she found out everything, she came to my room. She was so scared, but still she went to your room and sang you to sleep." Evan continued reading the letter, each word from his deceased wife like a dagger in his heart. "Our son deserves to know the truth. He deserves the chance to be different from his grandfather. But your father found out that I know. He threatened me, said that if I told anyone, it wouldn't just be my life at risk." "That's when she came to me," June completed, taking more documents out of the box. "Regina knew that I still kept evidence of my own case. She put it all together: fraudulent contracts, falsified environmental reports, records of irregular payments. And the next day she suffered the accident," Theo concluded, the word accident laden with a new bitterness. At that moment, distant thunder announced more approaching rain. The sound made Lily run inside, instinctively seeking the comfort of her grandmother. "Grandma!" the girl exclaimed, stopping abruptly as she sensed the tension in the room. Her big eyes scanned the distraught faces of the adults. Why is everyone sad? Evan looked at the little girl and saw for the first time not only the child who had shared her bread with a stranger, but the end result of decades of injustice. How many other Lilies had been raised in poverty because his family had stolen the future of their ancestors? "Ms. June," he said finally, carefully folding Regina's letter, "why did you keep all this for so long? Why didn't you reveal the truth?" "Before?" June pulled Lily onto her lap, hugging her as if seeking strength. "Because Regina made me promise that I would only deliver it when it was safe, when August could no longer hurt anyone, and because—" She hesitated, looking at Theo. "Because she wanted your son to grow up without the weight of this truth, until he was ready to do the right thing." "And you think I'm ready now?" Theo asked, his voice cracking. "I don't know," June replied honestly, "but I know that your fiancée, Christina, carries the same blood as the families your grandfather destroyed. The same blood that runs in my Lily's veins." The revelation hit everyone like a lightning bolt. Theo stood up, staggering. "What do you mean?" "Christina's mother and Lily's mother were cousins," June explained. "Both lost everything to the mining company. The difference is that the Rodriguezes managed to rebuild in another city. We were trapped here, watching other families be destroyed, one after another." Lily, feeling the weight of the emotions around her, hugged her grandmother tighter. "Grandma, don't cry. We can go back to our house if we want." "No!" Evan's voice sounded louder than he intended, startling everyone. "You're not going back to that shack. Not while I can do something about it." Theo looked at his father, surprised by the vehemence in his voice. "What are you going to do?" "What your mother wanted me to do 30 years ago," Evan replied, picking up the phone. "I'm going to call an extraordinary meeting of the board of directors today." "Dad, you can't be thinking of revealing everything? Of taking responsibility for my father's crimes and starting to repair the damage? That's exactly what I'm going to do." Yolanda, who had remained quiet, began to cry silently. "Regina would be proud," she murmured. "She always said that you had a bigger heart than your fortune, Evan." Mary Doris, who was watching everything from the door, cleared her throat discreetly. "Excuse me, but I think everyone needs to eat. The breakfast that June prepared—" "The cake!" Lily exclaimed, momentarily breaking the tension. "Grandma, the cake will burn!" The mention of the cake brought a sad smile to Theo's lips. "That cake, the smell reminded me of Mom. It was as if she was here again." "She is," June said softly. "In every recipe she taught me, in every moment we shared, in every truth she fought to reveal." As the group headed to the kitchen, no one noticed that Yolanda had picked up one of the documents from the box. Her eyes, suddenly lucid, scanned the lines attentively. "Wait," she called, her voice firmer than it had been in years. There's something here you need to see." Everyone turned around. In Yolanda's trembling hands was a contract, the pages yellowed by time, but still perfectly legible. "This contract," she continued, "isn't just about the docks. It's about a fund that August created in Regina's name." Evan took the document, his eyes widening as he read. "It's a compensation fund," he murmured, incredulous. "My father, he created a secret fund with part of the mining company's profits." "Regina found out," Yolanda confirmed, the memories returning like a river after a dam broke. "She found out and planned to use the money to help the harmed families. That's why your father, The elderly woman couldn't complete the sentence, but she didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood the weight of that revelation. "How much?" Theo asked, his voice just a whisper. "Millions," Evan replied, flipping through the pages. 30 years of compound interest. It should be enough to rebuild everything he destroyed," June completed, silent tears running down her face. Lily, who had approached Theo without anyone noticing, took his hand again. "Do you still Want to share the cake with me? The innocent question, amid such heavy revelations, provoked something unexpected in Theo. For the first time since this whole story began, he smiled. A genuine smile, free of the weight of pride and prejudice. Yes, I do. Lily, he replied, squeezing the small hand in his own, and I want you to help me do something more important too. What? The girl asked, curious. I want you to help me fix our family's mistakes, starting today. The rain was falling again, on Charleston, but inside the Miller mansion, something was changing. Like the aroma of cornmeal cake that still filled the house, a new hope began to spread, the hope that it wasn't too late to do the right thing. 6 months had passed since that morning of revelations at the Miller mansion. The spring sun bathed the brick streets of Charleston, and Lily, now wearing an impeccable school uniform, walked hand in hand with her grandmother toward her first day of school at the best school in the city. "Grandma, look how pretty my bow is," the girl exclaimed, touching the blue bow that Mary Doris had made in her hair that morning. June smiled, but her hands trembled slightly as she held her granddaughter's new backpack. The former housekeeper now held a prominent position in the company's administration, overseeing the program to repair the families affected by the mining company. Her small shack had been replaced by a comfortable house in the city center, but the memories of the years of struggle remained alive in her heart. "Good morning, Mrs. June," a small voice called. It was Sophia, 7, the daughter of one of the families who had been compensated by the reparations program. "Are you taking Lily to school too?" Before June could answer, a familiar car pulled up. Beside them, Theo got out, wearing a simpler suit than he used to wear, but with a more genuine smile on his face. "Can I give a ride to my favorite students?" he asked, opening the car door where Christina, his now wife, was already waiting in the passenger seat. Their wedding had taken place 2 months earlier, a simple ceremony in the mansion's garden, very different from the ostentatious celebration they had originally planned. Lily had been the flower girl, scattering rose petals along the same paths where her grandmother had worked decades ago. "Uncle Theo!" Lily ran to hug him, not caring if she was wrinkling her new uniform. The affectionate nickname had arisen naturally, as had the transformation of the once arrogant heir into a man determined to make a difference. Inside the car, Christina smiled as she watched the interaction. Her own family history with the Millers had transformed from a painful scar into a symbol of redemption. As director of the new community school funded by Regina's fund, she worked daily to ensure that other children like Lily had the opportunities that her family almost lost. At the mansion, Yolanda watched from the window as the city awoke. Her moments of lucidity had become more frequent since the truth came to light, as if the weight of the secrets had been part of what clouded her mind. "Have you had your breakfast yet?" Mary Doris asked gently, adjusting the shawl on her employer's shoulders. "Yes, Doris," Yolanda replied, her eyes fixed on a distant point. "You know, Regina was right about everything, about the importance of the truth, about my son's heart." At the company headquarters, Evan presided over a meeting different from the ones he used to conduct. Around him were not greedy shareholders or executives seeking bonuses, but representatives of the families affected by the mining company, all actively participating in decisions about the company's future. The transformation had not been easy. When Evan publicly revealed his father's crimes and announced the reparations plan, many members of the board threatened to sue him. The company's stock initially plummeted, and some called his decision corporate suicide. But then something unexpected happened. The Millers' story of redemption captured the country's attention. Ethical investors began to take an interest in the new direction of the company. The reparations program, funded by Regina's secret fund, became a model studied in universities. The quarterly report shows that the new sustainable mining method is exceeding expectations, one of the engineers presented. The recovery of degraded areas is progressing faster than predicted. Evan made a note, remembering how Lily had insisted on planting a tree in each recovered area. The childlike idea had transformed into a reforestation project that now employed dozens of locals. At school, Lily entered her classroom for the first time, her eyes sparkling as she saw so many books and colorful materials. Theo, who had taken on some environmental education classes as a volunteer, watched from the door with Christina. "She reminds me so much of Regina," Christina whispered, squeezing her husband's hand. "That same light in her eyes, that same ability to see the good in people." "It's true," Theo agreed, remembering the cornmeal cake that his wife had now learned to make. With June, "You know, sometimes I wonder if Mom somehow planned all of this. The fund, the documents, even the moment when Lily met Grandma in the square." "Some things are bigger than us," Christina replied, "like that first act of kindness of a girl sharing her bread." At the end of the day, everyone gathered at the mansion for a special celebration. The garden, now open to the community as a gathering space, was decorated with simple flowers. The old swing, restored, remained in its place, a silent witness to how time could heal old wounds. June, wearing a new dress but maintaining her characteristic dignity, watched Lily playing with other children. Some were daughters of old wealthy families from Charleston. Others came from humble homes, like her old shack. But there, in that garden, they were all just children. "Miss June," Evan approached, offering her a cup of coffee. "Do you think Regina would be proud?" June smiled, remembering her former employer and friend. "Regina is proud, Evan. She is here, in every smile of these children, in every tree planted, in every family rebuilt." Yolanda, in her wheelchair, called for Lily. The girl ran to her, climbing onto her lap with the naturalness of someone who has found a new grandmother. "Tell that story again, Grandma Yolanda," Lily asked. "The one about the angel who shared the bread." "Ah, my light," Yolanda smiled, her eyes clear and present. "Sometimes angels come in the form of children, you know. They appear to remind us of what is truly important." Mary Doris appeared with a tray, on it a steaming cornmeal cake with guava paste. The familiar aroma made everyone smile, each lost in their own memories. "Grandma," Lily called June as she took her piece of cake, "do you still miss our old house?" June thought for a moment, looking at the sky that was beginning to turn orange. "I miss what it represented, my love. Our strength, our ability to survive. But now we have something better." "What?" the girl asked, curious. "The ability to help others survive, too." Theo, who was listening to the conversation, added, "And you know what else we have, Lily? The chance to do things differently, to be better than our mistakes." On the horizon, the sun set over Charleston, its last lights reflecting in the windows of the mansion that had once been a symbol of oppression and was now transforming into a beacon of hope. The gentle wind swayed the leaves of the newly planted trees, carrying with it the aroma of homemade cake and fulfilled promises. That night, as the stars began to dot the South Carolina sky, the Miller mansion housed not only a family, but an entire community. The laughter of the children mixed with the conversations of the adults, stories were shared, and new memories were built on the foundations of the old. And somewhere, Regina smiled, knowing that her sacrifice had not been in vain. The truth, guarded for so long in June's heart, had finally blossomed, transforming not only a family, but an entire city. Lily, tired after her first day of school, fell asleep in June's lap, a serene smile on her lips. Her small act of kindness months ago had been the first stone of an avalanche of transformations that no one could have predicted. "You know," Theo commented softly, watching the girl sleep, I think I finally understand what Mom meant in her letter. It's not about how much money you have, but about what you choose to do with it." Evan nodded, his arm around his son's shoulders. "And sometimes," he added, "we need to lose everything to find something much more valuable." The lights of the mansion shone softly in the night, no longer as a symbol of power and oppression, but as a beacon of hope for all who passed by. And on the brick streets of Charleston, old stories of pain began to give way to new narratives of redemption, proving that it is never too late to do the right thing, especially when guided by the innocence of a child and the strength of love.